Good morning, Jim.
Morning, Andrew.
It might interest people to know that we are recording this on Bagpipe Freedom Day.
Bagpipe Freedom Day. That's what everybody in America calls it.
Yep. Well, I think it corresponds to when we released Finding Bagpipe Freedom way back in 2021.
Oh, really? I didn't even notice that. Did you release it on the 4th of July?
I did. I think.
That's funny. I didn't even notice. That's
I think we
great.
had a whole lot of pre-orders, and then
Yeah.
they were supposedly the pre-orders arrived on July 4th-ish. I mean, obviously not though, because the mail doesn't really run then, but it was like, that was the idea. I mean, and only
Yeah.
because it worked out that way. If it didn't, we would have done it on February 4th or something.
It was just a sign from the red, white, and blue universe showing that you had done the right thing.
Yep, exactly. So, happy belated Independence Day, everyone, of all kinds. Bagpipe independence, diplomatic country independence.
Mm-hmm. You want to know a funny story, Andrew?
Congratulations to the UK for Brexit, that kind of thing.
Ooh. You trying to get some activity in the comments, I see.
Yeah, you were supposed to just move on after that.
Years ago, I was playing a 4th of July parade with my pipe band.
As one does.
My pipe band friends. And there were porta potties set up, honey buckets, porta johns, you know what I'm talking about, at the beginning of the parade for the performers to be able to use as we're all getting ready. I walked over to one with my bagpipes, and I thought, ew, don't want to take them in there. Looked around, and there was a young person there who had something to do with some other group, maybe a marching band, maybe a float, who knows.
I'm pretty nervous. I'm nervous about where this story is going.
Don't worry, just funny. I said, excuse me, could you hold my bagpipes for me for just a few minutes while I use the restroom? And they said, sure. And I used the restroom, and as it came out, I said, thank you very much. I took my bagpipes, and they said, no problem, or don't worry about it. They said something that I could hear very clearly. Oh, they have a British accent. And I couldn't help myself asking. I was like, usually I wouldn't bring it up, but I said, sorry, are you from England? And they said, yes, I am. And I said, oh, but you're in the parade today? And they said, yes, I am. And I said, is this awkward for you? And they kind of chuckled and said, yes, it is.
Was it? Yeah, it was a kid. So the kid understood the joke?
Yeah, I mean, he was maybe like 17, 18 years old, I would have guessed.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that kind of kid, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, a little bit awkward, but I feel, I don't know. I feel like we're good now.
We got to be, right? We must be.
Yeah.
Aren't we?
I feel like Scotland and England. Well, Scotland particularly, man. Scotland, there's so many cool people from Scotland. See what I'm doing? I'm buttering up the audience here. I'm buttering up the potential critics of this line of conversation. But I mean, I feel like since then and during, we were building the Western world together, and now it's a wonderful place.
This is what made it great. Yeah. But go ahead and butter them up like a tin of that delicious crumbly Scottish shortbread. Why don't you?
Yep.
And speaking of Scotland and the good relationship
is shortbread Scottish, or is it?
I kind of thought it was, but maybe I'm wrong.
I don't know.
Get in the comments, friends. If you weren't upset about what's been said so far, get upset about my ignorance over shortbread.
Like, is shortbread a Scottish thing? I always kind of figured it was like sort of just a British thing, but I'm out of my element here, like Donnie from The Big Lebowski. I'm out of my element. But yeah, hit us in the comments. I assume you're talking about like the Walker's shortbread in the tin.
Yeah, the one that everybody has as a sewing kit afterward.
Exactly. Yeah. So, yep, we're going to need help on that one. Jim, this was sort of a pathetic, long-winded segue into the topic of today's episode.
But it's also excellent because being out of my element regarding things that are Scottish is like exactly it. Because like I've never been to Scotland, and but Jim, I play bagpipes, and so I'm like Scotland adjacent all the time. Like I wouldn't know what to do if I was in Scotland.
Okay, this brings me to my first point on today's episode: a North American in Scotland. That's the title of today's episode, right? And I happen to be, not necessarily good at this, but I have a lot of experience with this. So my first
being
point,
a North American in Scotland.
My first point is, let me ask you this. It's a little bit different for you because you're from Utah, but have you ever been to, like, let's say New York City or Disney World?
I have been to Disney World.
Like in Florida?
I've been through New York City, so I wouldn't say I've been to, never been to Times Square or anything like that. Yeah.
But you've been through there. And then, but you've been, like the one in Florida? I'm going somewhere with this. Have you been to the one in Florida?
I have been to yes.
Okay. This is my point to all North Americans out there. Going to Scotland is easy and awesome and fun, and everybody should do it. And not that expensive. It's a little expensive, but not that expensive. So it's time, Jim.
Fine, you've convinced me.
Yep.
We got Piping Live coming up and the Worlds and all this stuff. Like, plenty of reasons to go, right?
Yeah. And then for those who are worried about the cost of the plane tickets, have a look at the tourist airlines like Iceland Air or Aer Lingus. Like anytime I've traveled on those, they're perfectly comfortable and quite affordable to fly on those airlines, especially with a little bit of airline ticket craft. And so step one, the first thing I want to stress is let's get over there and get this done. Edinburgh is an awesome city. That's likely where you would fly into if you went to Scotland these days. It's an awesome city, tons of stuff to do. They take Visa and MasterCard. Your cell phone is going to work there. That wasn't always the case, but nowadays, double check. But I just get off the plane and they're like, hey, for $5 a day, your cell phone will continue to work. And I say, no problem. And then it's awesome. It's great. We got to do this. We got to make it happen. It's got to happen.
Okay. Yeah. It's got to happen. Well, it's going to happen. But when it does, I want to be prepped. What should I know before I go? I don't want to be a big, dumb idiot walking around Scotland not knowing what's going on.
Yep.
Give me a little insider scoop, Andrew. What's it like being a North American in Scotland?
It's pretty chill. People speak with a different accent, but it's like not that much different than going to like Brooklyn or New Jersey or something, accent-wise. I mean, it's a big change, but it's workable. Glasgow is a little dodgy. It can be hard to understand what people are saying, but I feel like just like it would be if a Scottish person came to your town, I feel like you're fairly patient with a person that speaks a little bit differently. And riffing off of my optimism and praise for the Western world, I mean, that's the kind of people we are. We're nice people in general. You're just going to let that dangle.
Heck yeah. The modern, yeah, absolutely. The modern Western imperial powers, absolutely. Anybody is going to say we're very nice people. Heck yeah.
Absolutely. So there you go. So Jim, give me some specific questions that I can answer to get this party started.
Well, knowing the cell phone will work, that's nice. So I get off the plane in Edinburgh and I walk out, and of course I'm a North American bagpiper in Scotland. How many steps do you think I'm likely to take before I hear bagpipes? Because my assumption right now is bagpiper on every corner in every metropolitan area throughout all of Scotland.
Yeah.
They're just everywhere.
Yeah, and at least 1 in 10 people are wearing kilts continuously all day.
Also, one of my assumptions, most of them probably have been out herding sheep and they just came into town for a cuppa. Yeah?
Right. Basically. No,
I don't think so. How many terrible assumptions am I making here?
I think you're making quite a lot of mistaken assumptions. They're not necessarily terrible. However, I will say this. Every time you go to the Edinburgh airport, there's at least one poor guy who thought that wearing his kilt when he arrived to Scotland was like, what you're supposed to do. There's always one. And by the way, no one's ridiculing this person, but I always think to myself, oh, this person may have gotten the wrong memo. Because, people in Scotland, they dress the same. They speak a little bit differently. They got the Scottish accent, but other than that, and they drive on the left-hand side of the road, which we could talk about if you'd like to. But that's pretty much it. Yeah, I think you're being. I sensed a little bit of sarcasm in your question.
Yeah,
like you didn't really think people were like that.
I'm taking the joke to a bit of an extreme for sake of the joke. That's for sure.
Yeah, it is 4th of July, so I think today's the day.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that. But like really, as like say I'm going there for Piping Live or for the World or something like that. I might be assuming that everybody in Scotland is also excited about the World Pipe Band Championship. Is it something that everybody knows about there? I mean, is it on ESPN? ESPN's equivalent in Scotland?
They do. I feel like they do play the World's final on BBC Scotland every year. They don't do it live. Like you would watch it on the BBC website in order to see it live. Like it wouldn't be on normal television. But then they do like a 1 hour special about it, and they sort of piece together the best performances. And the great Jackie Bird, and Bob Worrell's on there too. And they do some commentary on it. So people are aware of the piping, and the big piping and pipe band competitions are well known, and everybody knows about them. By the way, bagpipes are in the schools a lot now in Scotland. So a lot of people know basically about bagpipes and what's going on. But it's not like a huge thing. It's kind of like, I don't know what it would be like. It would be kind of like marching bands are here in at least this part of the United States. Like people know about marching bands, and they make patterns on the field, and sometimes they have competitions, and we know about marching bands here, but we're not like super fans. And I think that would be about the equivalent in Scotland.
So maybe even the week of piping live, if I get my Uber, I'm not going to be able to be like, take me to the bagpipes. I might need to have like an address for them.
Yeah. Well, maybe. I mean, in Glasgow, though, piping live, everyone knows about it, I would think.
It shuts down streets and stuff, right?
A little bit. Not really, though. So the Piping Live Festival, traditionally, unless anything changes, it's all centered around the National Piping Center, which is right in the city center of Glasgow. And that they're able to do that without shutting down any streets. They set up big tents in front of the piping center, and you could tell any cab driver or Uber or whatever to take you to the piping center. And at least 80% of Piping Live happens there, I would say. So that's what you would do.
What about buying bagpipe stuff in Scotland? I have a few friends who have gone over, and that has been the intention. Is that a reasonable thing to think that I could walk into a shop somewhere? Maybe that like R.G. Hardy will be on one corner, and another famous maker on another corner. I'm blinking suddenly, right? But that I'd be able to just walk in and be like, give me a set off the wall.
Yeah, well, no, not really. No. You could definitely do that. So there's definitely the R.G. Hardy factory, which I don't really know for sure, but I feel like they're pretty close to Glasgow. Then there's the McCallum factory, which is maybe an hour's journey by train or something, where you could definitely go to those shops, and I'm sure you could walk out with a set. But it's not like there's not like bagpipe shops all over the place.
To get to the McCallum factory, would I be taking, would you say, maybe a train journey north?
No, nice try. But you can take the steam train to Mallaig, though, if you want to.
Oh, yeah, that's a real thing. That's the train that was in Harry Potter, isn't it?
Basically, yep. It's some viaduct along that route that they filmed that.
I really think that this does say something about me, a typical North American who hasn't been to Scotland, immediately tying things to fantasy novels.
There you go.
Oh, that part of Scotland is the part from Harry Potter, right?
I will say that if you take the train, from Glasgow and you head to a place like Oban or even Inverness, but if you take the train north from one of these big cities and you go a couple hours, it is like a fantasy novel, like the scenery. Highly recommended. When in doubt, just take a train and go up into the Highlands, because it's amazing. And the trains are reliable too. You could realistically do a nice train journey throughout the day, and you don't have to worry about getting stranded anywhere or anything like that. The trains work really well. And the buses.
I'm probably not the only bagpiper who has thought how cool it would be to go to Scotland with my bagpipes and go to some cool places and play my bagpipes in those places.
Yep.
Are there any, have they got tired of that at any tourist destinations? Are there any signs up that say, like, bagpiping permitted only between, 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock p.m. or anything like that? Am I going to make myself
I don't think so.
Social pariah or a nuisance?
I don't think so. I will say that the busking scene in the big cities is kind of intense. So, if your plan is to go there and busk, I'm not sure if you need a permit or anything like you might need in some American cities. Not sure. But I am pretty sure that you'd have to figure out diplomatic solutions with other buskers. For example, there's always a piper right outside Edinburgh Waverley train station. And I don't know. I don't know if you could go up to him and be like, hey, let's do a duet or something like that. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Is this what people want to do? They want to go to Scotland and just, play their pipes in different places?
I suspect that I mean, maybe it's only me, but I don't think it could possibly be only me. You know, usually if I think a thing would be cool, I assume there are at least some other people who think that that'd be cool, you know?
Yeah.
So maybe
Well,
that's foolishly
I don't know.
assumed on my part.
Yeah, I will say it's never really interested me that much, but it has interested some people, and you never know. I don't know. I remember we used to go with the RMM Kids Band. We used to go places, and I can't remember if it was in Scotland or somewhere else. But yeah, sometimes the kids would go out with adult supervision and just play their pipes and put their pipe case out and see, and they made like a good chunk of change just busking.
Did any of that have to do with them being like adorable kids?
Yes,
You know?
I would think so.
Yeah.
I mean, this is
Yeah.
part of the reason I don't have that much interest in busking is
You're not adorable enough.
I mean, I
is
am
anybody
in my own way. But
do you think I'll be impressing anybody if I you know, everybody I run into, I tell them that I play bagpipes?
they would at least know enough about it to be able to feign interest in your playing bagpipes. Yeah.
Hmm.
No, but I suppose they would tell you, usually when you discuss you're playing bagpipes with someone, they know someone who plays bagpipes, or they know a fairly well-known bagpiper, and I suppose they'll want to know if you've heard of that person before.
Mm. So you've been going to Scotland fairly regularly for years now. Is there anything that you wish you would have packed, or that you encountered after you got there the first trip, that ever since then you always pack that thing, or you know, you never pack that thing, or I don't know, does anything come to mind as far as like, as your trips have gotten, I'm assuming, smoother and better executed, what are the things that changed to make them smoother and better executed?
The number one thing that I had to learn, by the way, this isn't going to be the answer you thought. The number one thing I had to learn that has made traveling to Scotland way easier is that you have to sleep on the plane on the way there.
Is this a jet lag situation, or just
Yep, exactly. So all the flights over are going to be overnight. And even though you're excited about going to Scotland, and even though you just can't sleep on the plane, right? You know these people. Are you one of these people?
I'm not. I sleep everywhere easily.
I did.
So
oh, you sleep everywhere easily. Okay, good. Because there's a lot of people who are like, oh, I don't sleep on planes. Yes, you do. And by the way, I was one of these people. It's difficult to sleep on a plane. So even if you're not sleeping, you're at least closing your eyes and resting and doing your best throughout the flight over. And you're not watching the movies. And one time, Stuart Little and I got Game Boys and we connected them and we played Mario Kart the entire plane ride. But then that just devastates your system, and it's going to be like 2 or 3 days before you're functioning normally.
How is Stuart Little at Mario Kart, by the way?
Really, really impressive.
Of course he is. Everything that guy does.
Yeah, most really top pipers are extremely coordinated. It's a weird thing.
Point.
Yeah.
Good point.
Most of them are extremely coordinated and stuff like that. I have no doubt. For example, Callum Beaumont is a lights out golfer. Just incredible. Andrew Bonar was as well. I mean, these are just, people that I've, played golf with or whatever, played games with over the years. Reed Maxwell was a really great soccer/football type guy. I recall that. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, I wasn't bad, but Stuart was probably better than me at the Mario Kart.
Yeah. I love imagining that. That's great. So the number one thing is try to sleep on the plane on the way over. I guess that just sets you up to be in the proper rhythm when you get there for the sun.
That's the thing. You have to do it. You're excited to be going on vacation, and the flight stewards and stewardesses are like, they're wanting to serve you the meal and they're coming by with a drink cart. But like, I put on my little eye mask.
Does it say Piper's Dojo across the front?
It should. It doesn't. I think it has a pattern of little stars on it.
Oh.
Yeah. And then I put my earplugs in, and then I just do my best to sleep. And by the way, I usually don't sleep necessarily very well or whatever, but then, that's the name of the game. Get a couple hours in there. And then the other thing that I always pack is a nap. I'm a big fan of a nap, Jim. So
I see. So you like plan time around it so that you can pull that off.
Yes. So when you first get there, it's going to take you a little while to get settled. It's going to take you a while to find wherever you're going to stay that night or whatever. But then once I get there, I set an alarm and I do a 2-hour nap. By the way, this is definitely going to get the comments going because a lot of people feel strongly that you should not nap and you should force yourself to stay up, which I agree that you should force yourself to stay up. But one of the things that's going to allow you to get there is a little 90-minute, 2-hour nap kind of, in the middle of the day there to get you through.
It shows how little I travel that I've never really had to worry about time change beyond a couple of hours. And so I wasn't aware of the wisdom of forcing yourself to stay awake. I guess that makes sense because then you're so tired you go to sleep at night, your new night.
Yes.
But you're saying a nap kind of lubricates that a bit, huh? Makes it happen better.
Yep, exactly. For me, absolutely. A little nap, a little planned short nap. Now, if you don't set the alarm, that would be a huge mistake. And if you nap for 5 hours, probably bad, right? But if you set a limit to your nap and just get a little bit of power up in there, then I think you'll be good to go.
Are there any things, items, or ideas that you have had to like purchase or come up with a solution while there?
Well, the big one is the power converters.
Oh, sure.
Because the British power is different than ours, and they have the different outlets as well. So you have to be a little bit clever about that. I have this Anchor thing. Anchor is like a company that does chargers and stuff like that. Batteries. Yeah. So I have an Anchor battery that I actually use most of the time. When in doubt, I use that thing. So I charge up in the battery, you can stick that battery into the wall in Great Britain using one of those little cheap adapters. They're like $5. And that thing I'll charge and you won't ruin it. And then almost everything else, I just charge from the battery, especially for my shorter trips. Another good trick is most laptops, like an Apple laptop, the charger will work. So you can charge a lot of your stuff using the ports on your laptop as well. That's a good trick. But you got to be careful, especially with stuff like shavers and hair dryers and whatever. For example, I recommend, going to a Tesco or some kind of store in Scotland and just buying a cheap hair dryer because Scotland will ruin your hair dryer.
Because of the power.
Because of the power, yeah.
What about your Blair Digital Chanter? Does that charge okay?
As long as, like you would plug that into a USB port. Or my battery would probably do it, but you got to you want to be careful with that kind of stuff.
It'd be a shame to fry one of those, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Yep. I have fried things over the years here and there. Luckily, nothing too crazy. But so the power is a tricky thing. And then you'll be tempted to buy one of those $100 power converter things, which I don't think you want to do. That's a separate device that will take the British power and convert it to proper American power. I think you can avoid that. I think you can avoid that, and with the battery technique or something like that.
The little international travel that I have done has been to places where beef jerky isn't much of a thing, and so
are you a beef jerky guy?
Yeah, I like jerky, and I live in a part of the country where maybe I don't know if more than anywhere else, but a lot of people make their own jerky from, deer, elk, cow, etc., any animal.
Yeah.
Even drying fish and stuff. So it has been a popular item for me to either, take with myself or more often ship to friends. If I were to go and visit them, they would expect me to show up with a box of American beef jerky. They'd be very excited about that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that Scotland doesn't have access to beef jerky, but I am curious if there are any products. I have a friend who lives in Japan, for example, where they're not allowed to sell Reese's peanut butter cups because of the carcinogens or something like that. And so
Wow.
anytime he comes here, he loads up on peanut butter cups. Anytime I send him a package, it's peanut butter cups. Any products like that you think people in Scotland would be excited about, I should take with me to hand out to my friends when I meet them there?
Wow. That's a great thought. And it doesn't really cross my mind. Other than that, when you get there, there are lots of interesting, weird stuff, which is interesting and weird, but not like too crazy. Like they've got chocolate
You mean
bars
like,
with little honeycomb
I
bits
see.
in them. And
Mm.
like all the British candy's phenomenal. The chocolate in Britain is better than the chocolate here because they don't use corn syrup. So
There, there's
it's like
there used to
proper
be a
chocolate.
pharmacy here in town owned by some folks from the UK, and they imported a lot of candy, and that's what I did every
Yeah.
Christmas for like my kids' stockings was loaded up with that stuff.
Yep.
They've
And
since
also, I
left
feel like
town, unfortunately.
I actually don't drink soda really anymore in my life, but I still will when I go to the UK, like a Coca-Cola from there that's got the proper cane sugar in it, I think, or something, but it's just a great treat there. So all that stuff. And yeah, so you will find some stuff like that. I don't think they have any crazy restrictions that we don't have, but I think you'll find, well, in the old days, the very first couple of times we went, my dad was all nervous about the mad cow disease and stuff. Remember that?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So
Oh, I remember.
the mad cow disease used to be a thing, but of course, it's really not a thing anymore. However, I will say that I used to donate blood, but I eventually kind of had to stop because I'd been to Britain a little bit too much. And at least a decade or so ago, too much exposure in Britain was like, we don't want you to donate blood anymore because of
Interesting.
the mad cow disease thing,
Oh,
apparently. But that
I
seems
didn't
like
know that.
ancient history to me. It seems like ancient history, and no, it's not a thing. And
Yeah.
everything's pretty normal. You will, of course, want to be careful with your import, export, and making sure whatever you're bringing in is legal. Like, for example, don't bring your fresh fruits and whatever.
Hmm.
And then maybe even you got to check on your beef jerky. I'm not quite sure, especially if it's your homemade beef jerky. I don't know.
Well,
Might want to
hey,
double
I mean,
check.
I don't know. I'm imagining that probably folks in Scotland are making their own jerky, so that maybe that's an item that doesn't apply in this way. But
Yep. Another common question about traveling to Scotland or anywhere with your pipes is about ivory. So you do have to be careful
oh
if your
yeah,
pipes have ivory on them. Bottom line is you really don't want to travel across borders with ivory pipes anymore. Like that for
Is
me, that's
even
the bottom
Blackwood
line.
getting to be a thing where it's a
So
protected
Blackwood is
species, or
not a thing. So that's another
hmm,
question that's related to this. So your Blackwood is totally fine. I've never even remotely had anyone ask me about Blackwood.
hmm,
But I do know several people who have had bagpipes confiscated due to the ivory on them.
hmm,
So, and then they confiscate them and they don't give them back till they're ready. And
hmm.
it could take a long time and, can be costly. So be very cautious with ivory. Most people that I know who have ivory on their pipes have a backup set in case, for traveling and stuff like that. So
Do you have any
that could be good.
suggestion, Andrew? If like, of course, there's like destination things. Like, I'm a North American piper, and of course, I'm going to the Worlds, or I'm going to the Edinburgh Tattoo, or whatever the event is. But aside from the thing that I'm going there for, maybe this is the only time I go in my entire life. Well, what else would you suggest I try to see or do while I'm there?
Oh man, there's so much good stuff. Edinburgh and Glasgow are incredible modern cities. By the way, in my opinion, this was not always the case. Like when I first started going to Glasgow, like in around the year 2000, let's say, it was kind of weird and very industrial kind of city, maybe. And maybe it's just because I was young and I didn't really have that much experience getting around and whatever. And I think also
Hmm.
now technology is just makes traveling so much easier, right? Anywhere you go, you can get an Uber. And the same is true in these cities. But yeah, the major cities, Edinburgh and Glasgow, incredible. And then all of the cities in between are pretty darn cool. Stirling is a pretty darn cool place to visit as well.
Hmm.
Um, and then you got your Inverness, you got Oban, you got Fort William, like all of those places easily accessible by train and highly recommended that you go visit. The islands, which by the way are accessible via Oban, at least the, what would you call them? Western Isles. There's lots of ferries that go in and out of Oban to visit those. Highly recommended. Super cool. Orkneys, I suppose, are not technically Scotland, but highly recommended. Just really cool place. And then the Isle of Skye, especially, you're going to probably want to rent a car for that. But the Isle of Skye is just an amazing way to spend a day or two. And then there's all the places in between, like Glencoe. Drive through there. It's going to be amazing. Inverary is a great town. Fascinatingly and perhaps charmingly not accessible by train. Inverary. So you got to take a bus or drive. I don't know. St. Andrews is a really cool place. I've ended up back at St. Andrews a whole bunch of times. And fun fact, not sure if it's still true, but as long as I can remember, on Sundays, the course is not open so that, anyone can walk the course at St. Andrews. So if you're a golf,
I bet that's nice.
If you're a golf adjacent person, to borrow your terminology, I enjoy hitting the ball around, but I'm not a golfer. But I do really like golf. And, if you tell a lot of people you could walk the old course, they'd be like, holy crap. Yeah. And it turns out to be true. All you got to do is pay for parking and then you can walk the course.
It shows how little I know about golfing that it took me a minute to put together context clues and figure out what St. Andrews was.
Yes, fair enough. So if you're not a golfer, you might not know. But if you are, the old course is like iconic. And it's honestly a great place. Yeah, and it's also, by the way, the beach is right there where they filmed the Chariots of Fire opening montage.
Yeah. Yeah, and honestly, now that you've talked about it a bit, I think I have seen that golf course show up in like some drone footage and stuff like that, kind of documentaries before, and I'm sure that would be lovely.
Yep. So St. Andrews on a Sunday, pretty cool. I mean, and again, I could be wrong. Who knows what has happened after COVID or whatever, if they still do that. But
people are gonna go to the game and be like, Andrew Douglas said I could come in. What happened to Right to Rome?
Yeah, they're gonna be like, all right, Paul, out of here. Yeah. So, yep, there's that. It's pretty cool.
I'm feeling increasingly self-conscious. We started with the Harry Potter thing where I was like, oh, yeah, that part of Scotland's Harry Potter. And then when you mentioned Orkney, I was immediately like, yeah, I'd want to go there. And then I realized, because I've been reading The Once and Future King again, and I think the Orkney faction is cool. I'm like, geez.
Geez.
Yep. Well,
Culloden.
That's me.
Culloden's another good one if you're a history buff. Culloden is not incredibly far from Inverness, so you can check that out. If you are not a history buff and aren't that interested, I would personally, this is one man's opinion, not recommend Culloden. It's kind of like when you visit, Civil War battlefields and stuff. If you're not into it, it's just a field.
Yeah.
But if you are into it, Culloden was an incredible moment in history.
And if you're not a history buff, but you're just buff, there are some
lots of
lifting
CrossFit
stones,
gyms.
From what I've heard.
Lots of good CrossFit gyms in Glasgow if you're worried about staying fit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
CrossFit Glasgow is a famous box, as it were, and it's right across the river from where they do the Worlds.
Yeah.
Amazing. Just what everyone's looking for.
A few of the top contenders in the strongman competitions and stuff like that currently are Scottish individuals, if I'm not mistaken, including a pair of brothers, maybe.
But the Icelandics are they're like the best, right?
Those competitions I feel like are always who can place right below the Icelanders, right? Like they're always going to win. And so it's really just, for the rest of us, it's just competition for right under those guys.
Now, who knows what's going to happen this year, but it tends to be that way in the pipe bands too. It's who's going to come second to field marshal.
Right,
it's really what that's generally, statistically speaking, what we're really talking about here. Okay. Yeah. So, by the way, here's another thing that just popped into my mind, Jim, is, Scotch. Even if you're not super into Scotch, I highly recommend doing a distillery tour or two. By the way, I was mentioning Oban. Oban's a great place to visit, and the Oban distillery is a great distillery to tour. But any one of the posh Scotch whiskey distilleries are great places to stop in and just kind of see how they make it. And it's always good fun, and you always get to drink some at the end. It's pretty good.
Go sniff a barrel and take a sip and stuff like that, huh?
Yep, exactly. And by the way, Scotland is really into gin nowadays too. A lot of people don't know
Oh,
that.
bringing back the Roaring Twenties is what I think of every time I hear the word gin. I'm assuming that they're also into, everything that went with The Great Gatsby, basically.
Yeah, I'm not a huge beer drinker. Beer is fine, and I do occasionally enjoy it. I'm not a huge beer drinker, but gin. Go anywhere in Scotland and order a gin and tonic, and it'll be a fantastic gin and tonic. Just go for it. Highly recommend it.
Hmm.
It'll be good. Okay.
So Andrew,
have we covered the basics? It looks like you got more. This is good. This is
well,
good. This is what we want.
mostly what I was curious about is what I'm thinking is what I was gonna say was take me home in terms of the episode and from Scotland. Is there are the kids expecting you to bring home specific things that they know that exist in Scotland that you're like, it's the special thing? Or, I mean, aside from memories, obviously, take home the memories, obviously.
Yeah.
But speaking of like the Scotch, like what if I wanted to take a bottle home? What should I have in mind about what they're going to let me take on the airplane? That kind of thing too,
Yep. Great point. My recommendation is Google it and read about it. I don't know. I've never really, for me, my strategy there is avoidance. So I don't usually buy liquor and bring it home. My assumption would be there's a limit to how much you can bring before you have to start claiming it and paying your taxes and duties and stuff like that. So it's up to you how you want to handle that. My wife, so when I travel to Scotland, this is what I do. I get books for the kids because British kids' books are awesome. Like they're allowed to be a little bit edgier in Britain with what the kind of stuff they can publish in kids' books, which is great. So always getting the kids' books there because they're just better in the UK, in my opinion. So a couple books for the kids and then chocolate for the wife.
Some of that good chocolate you were talking about.
Because it's so good. Yeah, and that's my sort of go-to strategy for gifts to bring home. And they're also not too big, so you can fit them in your carry-on luggage.
For sake of adjusting back to like, normal life afterward, do you try to nap on the way back too, or is that all gone out the window by that point?
Yeah, great question. So usually those flights home, for lack of a better word, they're usually midday. So, on the assumption that you're adjusted and whatever. Yeah, I usually snooze on the plane a little bit, but I find that I don't have to stress about it too much. I mean, usually by the time I'm getting home, I'm pretty tired, but yeah, on the way home, that's when I get my movies in. Get the movies in, make it happen for the most part.
Try to get Stuart Little back on Mario Kart, that kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Man, there's just so much. I really enjoy traveling there, and it's kind of a fun adventure, but it's not that bad. Like my point that I was trying to make at the beginning is if you went to Disney World and you thought that was cool, Scotland is like basically the same thing. I think people have it in their mind that it's super far away and super foreign and super intimidating, but it's really not that bad. And I highly, highly enjoy going, and I highly recommend other people take the leap and make it happen. Jim, if that's not an episode ender, I don't know what is.
Yeah, that's an ender right there. That's a good ender.
Hey everybody, Andrew Douglas here from the Pipers Dojo, and I just want to say thanks so much for listening to today's iteration of the podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard here today, it would be super helpful to us and to a lot of bagpipers out there trying to find us. If you could give us a top-notch review on whatever platform you're using to listen to this podcast, particularly Apple, iTunes, and Spotify and things like that, your review would be really, really helpful. So if you have a moment today, definitely go over there and help us out. Other than that, until we meet again on the podcast or somewhere else, thanks again for listening.